Welcome back to Just Giants with Grump and the Cranky Fan, the best damn podcast for the best damn football team. I'm your host, the Football Grump, and with me as always is Mike the Cranky Fan.
Hey Grump, what's going on? What's new?
Yeah, we're a day late, but not a dollar short.
Day late. Well, actually, we kind of am since we had no sponsors. So
That's a good point. But
Yeah.
held back just so I could have everything that I needed to make this episode as good as I could make it. So you're welcome, I guess. But we do have some Giants news before we get into, the theme of these string of podcast episodes here of going over the draft and free agents and stuff. Two Giants have moved on. First, Will Hernandez went to Arizona, where I believe he's being reunited with his college offensive line coach or something.
and apparently Grump, he's the reason for all the ills of the Giants, and also he could be what was the thing we saw today on Twitter that was pretty hilarious? Somebody making the jump that the Cardinal, I don't know if he was a beat writer or what he was saying. Just like he'll have the fountain of youth who's the Arizona because look what happened when guys leave the Giants.
Yeah, it was like the stupidest tweet of all time. I don't know why Arizona beat reporters are acting like this signing has to be something more than what it is. I mean, it was not a priority for us to re-sign, and we have no offensive linemen. So I mean,
Right,
it should say everything.
Right
and I like Will Hernandez, and I think that he's actually not that bad. I think he's a fringe starter. I don't think he's terrible. If he's the worst offensive lineman you have as a starter, that's not so bad. But that being said, there's no reason to defend the signing as if it's something much, much more than a depth signing or that he's going to be like every Arizona beat writer was like all over this. They're posting videos from his combine in 2018 bench pressing. I mean, if you don't have any actual football highlights, that's usually the kind of thing that you post. So, I mean, that's pretty sad. But the tweet in question was something like, apparently they were unconnected
so
facts.
Everyone leaves.
Yeah, it was that Eric Flowers had his career highs when he left, and that nobody runs into more sacks than Daniel Jones, which apparently are two completely unrelated facts. And the related thing is that there's something mystical about this area, since Will Hernandez's best year was actually the same year that same coaching staff that traded Eric Flowers away. So, I mean, none of it makes any sense whatsoever. I tried to, go easy on him and just point out that Flowers and Jones never actually played together. He decided to double down. Yeah, he decided to double down on something stupid. There's statistical evidence that Kyler Murray runs into more sacks than Daniel Jones. So all of it was stupid, and all of it is to defend a signing. That's not a bad signing for Arizona. It's just no reason to hype the guy up for something he's not.
Yeah, I mean, it was disappointing that he never progressed to the next level. We had pretty high hopes for him, and his best years are his first couple of years with the Giants, and part of that might be just a victim of circumstance too with this team. But you're right, for a team that is that starved for offensive linemen, and what did he even sign for with Arizona? How much?
I don't know if the contract details came out because I don't know that I saw any.
Well, he didn't break the bank over there, and if it's a lineman that's not going to break the bank, and we're not interested, that tells you something. Yeah.
Similarly, but slightly differently, Jabril Peppers signed a one-year deal with the New England Patriots where he will be reunited with Joe Judge. And he'll play for a head coach that, quite frankly, really is good at using guys creatively into their athleticism. I could see him having a huge year there. That contract has incentives that will push him up into the $5 million range, so it's going to be very dependent on his injury. But he was injured pretty early on in the year last year, so he's had some time to recover. I wouldn't be surprised if he has a killer year up in New England.
Does that close the book officially on the trade now that he's gone? Is anybody left on their original teams after the trade?
Well, technically, I think Dexter Lawrence and O'Shane Ximines were the draft picks that were involved in the trade.
Okay. So
if I'm remembering right.
Yeah, I think you're right. So, it's too bad with the injury. I mean, if he wasn't injured.
No, I think so. I mean, he would be such a good fit in this system. I think they would have liked him back. I think it was always a long shot. It was always inevitable. I mean, I was surprised that Joe Shane was able to keep guys like Sterling Shepard and Blake Martinez, but those were cap. That was reducing cap hits. Jabril Peppers was currently not on the books, so he would have been an added expense.
Well,
so,
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I mean, would we even afford it? Could we have afforded him anyway, even if, let's say, there was no injury and he was on the open market?
I'm sure they could have done something. You know what I mean? Like, I still don't know that Sterling Shepard is like a massive need, that he needed to stay, that they couldn't cut. I think that one actually ended up saving more money, but even Blake Martinez is one where that could have been like a full cut for maybe more savings, and Jabril Peppers might have been a better move. I don't know, but I don't think that it was so. It's not like Jabril Peppers is like, we're doing this to make the room to re-sign a guy that's coming off of a career year. We're signing a guy who's coming off of an injury, so doing all of these financial gymnastics to make it work is kind of stupid anyway.
Yeah, but also that's what I'm saying. My point was, if he wasn't hurt, would we be even able to afford
No,
him?
no way.
That was my point. Yeah.
Although I think he'd still be eligible for the franchise tag, which would, you know what, that would be really expensive actually, because the top 5 for safeties. Yeah, I mean, it depends on the position how expensive that is. Whatever. So that sucks, but good luck to him. You know, a guy I've rooted for since out of college. So whatever. We also had the coaches meetings this week, which means that next Monday the Giants offseason workouts can begin. So by the time you hear us next time, the Giants will have already been with Coach Daboll, which is pretty cool. The coaches meeting involves the proposed rule changes, and there were 2 that I know of that were changed. Let's get into the overtime rule change here. Why don't you give me your thoughts on it?
Well, I mean, it's one of the things I've griped about with the NFL for the longest time, and we are just about there. It was ridiculous that football, the NFL, is the only sport in the only league where each team doesn't have an equal opportunity to score in extra time. And, you know, they've incrementally, very slowly have gotten to the point where it's more and more fair. Now we're almost there. You know, now this is for postseason only. The next step and final step will be to implement this for the regular season, and that will happen. That will definitely come at some point. These things, they gain momentum. You know, they'll test drive it in the postseason. Eventually, will be part of the regular season. I've always thought it was incredibly unfair, and that's all we're trying to do with this thing. Is they're just trying to make this as fair as possible. You know, I had an argument with somebody today that was like, well, now it's so much of an advantage of the team that wins the coin toss, because they know what the team that gets the ball second, because now they know what to do. And well, that's a secondary concern of mine. You know,
wait. I don't understand that argument.
Right. It's ridiculous. It's like, well, if you get the ball second, you know what you have to do. So if the first team, you know, gets a touchdown, now you know you can get a touchdown and 2-point conversion and win. Or they go for 2, the first team, and does it. It's a gymnastic argument.
Yeah, it's a
no
risk
sense.
Either way. I don't think
exactly.
That really matters,
you still have to do it.
Yeah.
You know, and to me, what they're trying to do, the purpose of the rule change is to make it fair so both teams have a chance. That's the wrong they're trying to right. You know, if there's okay, well, when the second team has it, they have an advantage at the end. You know, if because of a coin flip, that's some 3D complaining is what all that is. I mean, if you want to get rid of coin tosses out of the mix altogether, I mean, I have a proposal that I don't know what you think about this, but make it like baseball and make it a true home field advantage that the away team always gets the ball first, and then the home team gets the ball second.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any problem with that, other than now we have an uneven amount of games.
That's true, but I'm thinking more about the postseason, actually.
Oh, okay.
You know, like, you know, it just, you know, it's the schedule is a little bit random. Well, random in the fact that if the Giants are playing the Dolphins this year and it happens to be in Miami, it's a little bit of randomness in that way, as opposed to being in the Meadowlands. But to me, I'm thinking more of the advantage that's earned is in the
Right,
postseason.
you're thinking on the merits.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
if you,
I'm
you
with
get,
that, honestly.
you
Because
get home field. The home field advantage is important, but crowds aren't the same as they were 20, 30 years ago. I mean, with StubHub, with Ticketmaster, with Ticket Exchange, with the prices being so expensive, you don't have that 100% fans in the stands for your team anymore. So it's not exactly the same as the way it used to be. And to me, that's a real advantage of, not taking off in week 16, playing your guys to ensure you get the highest ranking seeding possible. And I just think that's another way to make home field advantage happen.
I like that, but I think instead of just you always get the ball in the second half, is you get to choose. Home team just gets to choose whether they want the ball first or second.
Yeah, that's true.
Because I mean, what if I have an opponent that I want to score first on? And that's my strategy. I don't know. I don't want to be just because I'm home. I'm fucked now. My home field advantage is the opposite. So, I like where you're headed though. I think that's fair. I mean, a coin toss is silly. I mean, it's supposed to be just completely random. But why should the playoffs be random?
And I completely hate the argument that says, well, you should stop them on defense if you want to win. Don't let them score a touchdown first. It's like, this league is an offensive league. The rules are set up for offenses, not for defenses. And at the end of games, the defenses are the teams that are worn down, not the offenses. So they're at a complete disadvantage. I mean, why do you think every time you win a coin toss in overtime, you always take the ball first? It's not. It's not. Nobody has this strategy. Well, my defense is so superior to their offense, I'm going to stop them on three plays and get excellent field position to win with a field goal. No. You want the ball first because you want to, you have an advantage and you can get that touchdown and win the game over. So that's no argument why to keep the old way that it was. I mean,
I agree. It's no argument to keep it the way it was. My argument that I've always said that is that is the way the rules are. So you should construct your roster to stop people. You know what I mean? Like, as long as those are the rules, then you need to invest enough in your defense to know that you might need to make a stop on in overtime. I don't know.
Right.
That's just the way I
But again,
I don't know.
The rules are skewed towards offense.
They are, and it's been slowly chipping away at the defense over the years. So it makes sense that other rules need to catch up. I mean, to be fair, right? Like, we've made these rules. They were all kind of under the guise of safety. You know what I mean? Like not hitting the quarterback as much. Now there's no late hits at all, and then defenseless receivers and all this stuff. And they've been slowly chipping away in the name of player safety. But really, they've made it harder and harder for defenses to be effective. And so we've seen these point totals go up, and the other rules haven't caught up to even the playing field a little bit.
And in every single sport, in every single league besides the NFL, both teams have an opportunity to win the game by scoring. Baseball, both teams are up. Basketball, overtime, you keep playing. Hockey, same thing. Soccer, you have an extra period. If it's, we're playing in a playoff or playing in like Champions League or the World Cup or something in knockout rounds. It's just silly that, you're only playing half your team in half your game. So I'm glad they finally have figured this out.
Well, do you think it's dumb that it's not for the regular season?
I would prefer it for the regular season too, but there are some rules that have changes in postseason. I mean, there are no ties in the postseason. If you play,
I don't think there should be ties at all.
I don't think there ever should be ties. I mean, it's not like. I mean, there are ties.
There's not enough games for there to be ties.
Exactly.
I mean, hockey is a little different.
Well, hockey and soccer are different because there's a point system.
Right, and that makes sense.
You're in first place because you have more points. 3 points for a win and 1 for a tie in soccer, 2 and 1 in hockey. But there are no points. So if there's no points, there's no point in having a tie.
It just makes the playoff scenarios like interesting, but really that just means confusing as hell and stupid.
Right, and I don't want to hear the argument about, these games will go on for 7 hours. I mean, come on, that's the baseball argument of like, I don't want these 16-inning games. First of all, it never happens.
Second of all, the football, there's so few games. They all are important. So
right.
If one is pretty long, who cares?
And also, what do we get a tie every year? Maybe one a year, one every 2 years. So it's not like it. It's not like.
Do you think that they are trying to keep the overtime shorter for player safety? Like, so the guys aren't on the field for so long? Do you think that maybe factors in?
I think so. I think
I could see that.
Yeah, and that's fine. If you want to make a game, they made it from 15 minutes to 10 minutes, and it puts more emphasis on each time you have the ball. You need to, maybe it makes them try, like, be more aggressive on your play calling and stuff. I don't know, but again, it happens like once a year. There's a tie. So to me, if you have to go to a second overtime, just do it. You're right, and there's only 17 games in a season, and every game matters so much.
Every game is so important, especially those divisional games, the conference games. They all have really important implications. And they are tiebreakers, right. Literally.
And you're adding playoff teams, so you're having more emphasis on home field advantage, and the advantage you're getting from that.
There's 8,000 different rules in the NFL to break ties at the end of the season and set the seeding, and yet they allow senseless ties.
Mm-hmm.
I've never really thought of it that way until just this moment. But
yeah,
that really is it in a nutshell, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Pretty much.
Yeah, I'm for it. They also instituted a rule where it was an Eagles proposal where a team can decline an interview for someone interviewing before the draft for like a junior executive position, and this is like a direct response to the Giants signing or hiring Brandon Brown. I think that this is kind of whack because it implies that he was hired solely for his knowledge of the Eagles organization, because that's the basis for for saying no to this maneuver. And that's kind of stupid because Brandon Brown's a very smart guy, and there's a lot of reasons to hire him. Like, for one, we just fired everyone. I mean, that's the best reason right there. I mean, does it really have to be malicious intent to hire him?
It's idiotic. I mean, it's also the slippery slope. I mean, I can understand coaches because
and GMs for that matter.
If you're in the middle of a playoff run, you want your coaches to be fully focused on the task at hand. But now we're talking about executives, and we're not even talking about
junior executives. Assistant GM.
What's next? Beer vendors can't move teams now until there's a specified team. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's sour grapes. What they do last year, all they did was troll the Giants. They tanked the last game of the season. They picked the guy we want. They traded to pick the guy they wanted ahead of us last year. But when the karma goes back on them, they whine and bitch.
Oh, hardly. Hiring a guy who is a very intelligent person for his. I mean, like. Sorry, I don't know. I don't know what to tell you.
We're talking about a league where we're trying to have.
You should have promoted him yourself. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah. We're talking about a league where they want to have more opportunities for everybody to have jobs in this league. And now you're restricting the potential because now,
Yeah, this guy can't grow because...
To improve themselves and have a better position they do now. It's not even a lateral thing. So it's just silly.
Yeah, dumb. I don't really have a strong opinion about that other than I don't see a need for it. I don't see how it
I don't see a need
anything.
for it either.
Yeah,
and again,
it seems like sour grapes.
Then it becomes a slippery slope. Like, where does the line stop? From junior executives to what? Middle management to ticket takers to
scouts.
Scouts. I mean, come on.
Yeah. Let's get into the edge class here. This is what this episode's kind of about.
One last thing I want to talk about with the these meetings and stuff is that Mara got up there and he had a bunch of comments about different things. Is it just me, or should John Mara no longer speak to the media?
Should he no longer?
Yes. I mean, I feel like he's muddying the waters more than doing any good by actually speaking. I mean, do we need to hear from owners, especially an owner where he's done a lot of public relations damage to this team in the past few years? They've just hired a brain trust, and given them the keys to the car and said, rebuild this team. And it just, I think his opinion about whether they're going to trade Saquon Barkley or not, or whether Daniel Jones is a quarterback or not. I know it's probably all nonsense, but it's unnecessary noise that we don't need.
I think that John Mara is not as good at talking to the media as he thinks he is, but I also don't think he's horrendous. It's one of those things where I don't understand why we're asking him to begin with. Like, why are we asking him what's happening with Daniel Jones? Did he not just hire a general manager to handle the fucking team? Like,
Yeah, that's it.
That was the whole thing, was that he was going to have autonomy. So what are we asking him for? Who cares? Like,
Right.
why aren't you asking Joe Shane? So, I mean, on the one hand, yeah, he should probably shut his mouth, and he's not that good at talking. He should just I mean, it's up to him at a certain point to be like, I hired somebody to do all that work, guys. Our stuff is under wraps right now. We're not really looking to do anything that's going to tip our hand. Sorry. You know what I mean? And unless, and I don't know, maybe, look, maybe there is some smoke here, right? Maybe they really are honing in on a quarterback and they're trying to throw off the scent. I seriously doubt it.
I seriously doubt it.
John Mara was fine in front of cameras when this team was doing well because nobody asked him anything of any consequence. Once they started falling, I'm being serious.
You're right.
He was not a problem in front of cameras when this team was doing well. Everything started to fall apart with like the Josh Brown thing. That was where everything that came out, and then he's trying to do damage control, and he's just doing more damage. And the more he's had to face the music, the more he's become a soundbite. Whereas we never used to hear a peep from John Mara because he would just kind of be smiling and answering fluff questions because the team was in the playoffs. And it's really easy to say, well, we're going to have to reload. We're going to have to readjust some of our things so we can make it over the hump. Is a much easier answer than having to answer for being in the dredges.
Four head coaches in 7 years will kind of do that to you too.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you on that. Both can be true. We should be. I don't know why we're asking, and also he should shut his mouth.
Yeah,
I think
we're only
both.
asking questions. He's making himself available for questions to be asked.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, there's nothing he can do about that. But I mean,
Just not be available to speak. It's very simple. You know, when there's cameras in your face, don't talk. Just wave and I mean, I don't recall. For all 32 teams, do we hear from Stan Kroenke on what he thinks about the Rams going to each season?
I mean, I don't know.
I mean, do we hear from whoever the managing partner of the Packers is each year talking? No, we don't. No. So do we hear from
Well, I don't know. I don't
Virginia
know.
McClaskey? We don't hear from her.
John Mara is also an influential person among owners. So, I mean, like we do hear Jerry Jones's opinion on everything, and he's also another one of those influential owners.
Well, he thinks, he's the GM also. So
yes, that's also
multiple
true.
hats.
Yeah, you're right. We hear from Robert Kraft a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Those guys are all influential. So, I mean, their opinion is more than some of the guys that, or I guess they're listened to a little bit more than other owners around the league. Like, we don't really hear from Shad Khan. Well, I guess we do kind of hear from Shad Khan because Jacksonville's always doing crazy stuff.
Yeah, but do we hear from him like as far like on a football level? We hear from him about are they going to London or not?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Stadium things. We heard a lot about him at the Urban Meyer situation. But do we hear about well, Trevor Lawrence? I think he should be starting as a rookie.
Yeah. Well, those hard-hitting Jacksonville reporters really should get off their ass, I guess, right? All right, let's talk some edge stuff here. The Giants have a huge needed edge. They've had it for a while. They have started to address it. I think. What was your opinion on Azeez Ojulari by the end of the year? His rookie year, by the way. He's a very young rookie.
He's very rookie. He sort of ran out of gas towards the end of the year, but that's kind of expected as a rookie, right?
Well, they play more games as a professional than they do in college.
I mean, I don't think he's ever going to be like that Pro Bowl type of edge, coming off the corner and stuff and being game-changing. But I definitely think he's a piece for the future that could complement, if we bring in somebody like a real, can't-miss guy, like, if we draft him in one of our 2 picks now. But a complementary piece on the other side for sure.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. He also he got off to a much faster start than I was expecting as well. I mean, I think where we drafted him around 50 was only a little bit lower than I was actually kind of thought he belonged. But that was a lot lower than a lot of people thought. Some people thought he would have been in the first round, and stuff like that. But he came right in and was getting pressures and sacks right off the bat. With kind of no help on the other side. I mean, we didn't really have any edge rushers of any consequence on the other side.
Right.
Lorenzo Carter got hurt was coming back from injury, whatever. I agree. I think Aziz Ojolari's future, I do think that he could be a Pro Bowler, but as a result of having other pass rushers besides him,
Right.
having an offense that scores a lot of points and allows him to kind of just pin his ears back. I don't think on his own he's going to be that alpha dog, but he
Correct.
would be an excellent second piece if there is an alpha dog on the other side. And that's kind of our number one guy. After that is just probably guys that should be depth.
And I guess as we get into this, we both agree that, offensive line is still the number one priority on this team, but edge rush, we both agree, is number two. Like,
yeah, probably.
All things considered equal, we would rather draft a franchise edge rusher than a franchise cornerback, correct?
As far as the draft goes, well, I don't know. Is edge rusher really our second most important need, or is tight end? I mean, you can make there's no like top talent tight end. There's no first round talent tight end. So I mean, it's kind of a different argument, but they quite literally don't have a starter there, whereas they could roll out there with what they've got at edge.
I would say if we could get a game changing edge rusher is much more important than
a game-changing tight end.
Right.
Yeah, you're probably right. Yeah,
it's very rare that you have to completely game plan for a tight end who you cannot match up. He's a mismatch in everywhere you go, and completely changes how you look at it in offense. Where a dominant edge rusher, a dominant guy who can get tons of sacks, you have to completely game plan for that guy and make that mission one.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're splitting hairs here, right? Like, we agree. Like, this team hasn't had an edge presence. The defense has suffered for several years in a row because they have not been able to get pressure. They've tried to address it by throwing money at the position. They went out and they bought, oh my God. Who did they spend all that money on in 2016? And he ended up going to Cleveland in the trade anyway. Oh my God. Whatever. The guy from Miami, Olivier Vernon. They went out and they signed Olivier Vernon. They threw a bunch of money at Jason Pierre-Paul that they couldn't afford at all. And it kind of worked. At no point was Olivier Vernon really putting up huge sack numbers. And it's been kind of bad since before that and since after that. And it's been the main problem for this defense. Now, you bring up an interesting point about cornerback versus edge. I think that now the league and Wink Martindale's system and the way the defenses are playing, having as many top quality cornerbacks is more important than having top edge rushers. Because, I mean, you can always double up an edge rusher, and there's only so many guys that can consistently beat double teams. But corners that can lock down one-on-one, there's nothing you can really do to get rid of. I mean, they pretty much wipe out a receiver. I mean, there's very little you can do about that. So, but that said, the draft is much easier, in my opinion, to find the future stars at edge than it is at corner. Corner seems to be very hit or miss. So I would say corner is probably more important thing to gather as a general rule for the defense. But right now, the Giants, they should be worrying about edge, and they have a legitimate chance to supplement their edge with one of their two very, very high picks. There's a couple of tackles in this draft class. There's a couple of edge rushers that are insanely good. I think Aiden Hutchinson is the best prospect in this draft. He looks like the next coming of TJ Watt to me. He really is incredible. So I think he should go first overall. And then, you've got a couple of tackles that are really good. Somebody's probably going to want a quarterback. Kyle Hamilton might be in that mix. Ahmad Gardner might be in that mix. That would push somebody down like Kayvon Thibodeau. And I don't, Tibbs has his own flaws, but as far as a player goes on the field, he is something we haven't had in quite a long time, and he could slip to us at 5 or 7. He's got the right balance of height, weight, speed. He never takes a play off. He's a super high motor guy. He even, is used in coverage sometimes effectively at Oregon, so he can drop back and cover guys into his zone. And occasionally he can even turn and run with running backs up onto like wheel routes and stuff like that. I mean, he is an athletic guy. He's super fast off the line of scrimmage. He gets after the quarterback. I mean, he is somebody that the Giants haven't had in a long time. I would compare him to somebody. I'm not really good at these comparisons or whatever, but in terms of production, somebody close to that JPP level of production.
So what's the knock on him then?
The knock on him comes from an interview he did, and I'm not sure when it happened, but they kind of highlighted why he chose Oregon over Alabama, and he was kind of going into the specifics of life after football. And what he was trying to say was that he was trying to set himself up for the most success he could possibly have. Whereas he goes to Alabama, he might be sitting for a couple of years behind other guys and only gets the one chance to show himself for whatever. And he was also kind of talking about Nike and their role with Oregon and how he's already setting up that thing. But it kind of sounded almost like he was worrying more about himself than football. And it was really the way he worded and phrased things. He kind of sounded like a doofus. Now, me personally, I listened to that, and I can see the criticism, and I can understand it, and I think that you could probably resolve that with some good interviewing. That's what these things are for, the combine. I mean, if you listen to it, he sounds kind of like an idiot. But he also said at the combine he was asked, about some of the questions he had, and he pointed out the Giants were asking him questions, things like, how are you going to feel when the media is dogging you because you don't have any sacks yet, and asking him these questions about how he's going to react to the perception of him outside of the locker room, not the coaches, the public, and he had to kind of give an answer that sounded pretty good to me, that he was bred for this, the interviews and all that stuff. Like he's been in the national spotlight since high school, and he's able to handle it, is what he said in that scenario.
This is the NFL. This is not the debate team. I'm serious. This is a classic example of overthinking something where, you can look at film from when he's in high school. You can look at every snap that he plays, playing in a major college in a major conference. Okay, the Pac-12 is a major conference. I'll concede that. You can watch him at the combine. You can watch Senior Bowls and all these different things, and you have all this evidence, all these data points, all of these anecdotal things, all of these trends, all of that. But then he says something stupid, and all of a sudden, everything else you've seen doesn't matter anymore. I personally have no problem with what he said, because more of these guys should be thinking about their long-term, situation, because an NFL career, more often than not, these guys who come out as like a 5-star recruit out of high school, a lot of them never even see the NFL. They flame out. You come in, you get hurt, you never get to that big contract. You never get to those big endorsement deals. So I have zero problem for what he said. Can he be more articulate about it? Maybe, but again,
they'll give him classes on that.
Who cares at the end of the day? I mean,
come on. I agree with
what you said about him are more important. You said has a motor.
Yeah. No, yeah, it's definitely the effort on the field is not in question.
Yeah. So if all those things are true, all right, fine. Send him to charm school. Send him out to answer questions so you can give the bullshit answers, the stock answers that people have. It's crazy, and it's unfair, and I wonder the motives behind people saying these things. So
I think that the motives are more generated to just force discussion when there shouldn't be. I mean, like, it's such a consensus guy that he was going to go top 5, and so it starts controversy. And
I think the problem is there's too much time between the end of the Super Bowl and the draft, and I think we have so much focus now on the draft. This is, 20 years ago, this is not an issue, but now, when you have NFL Network, you have ESPN, you have all of us, and the incredible focus on the draft and these things.
The pin drop gets magnified.
Yeah, it's like are you getting extra clicks if you have the same mock draft every week?
Yeah.
If there's kind of a consensus in something, who cares? So I just think it's a product of, you need a story. We need to have a different angle, and there's just too much time that you just have to have new stories. So,
I agree with everything you said. I don't really have an issue with his interview at all. I don't really care. But I will say that coming here, it just is what it is. I mean, like, every detail of every question and answer is scrutinized here, where it's just not other places. And I wish it weren't that way, because I think it's silly and it forces us to talk about things I don't care about.
What do you mean by here in New York?
Here in the New York area.
Okay, but are these criticisms by Giants beat writers, or is this a national thing?
No, it's a national thing, but I'm just saying, like, how he answers questions to the media is important from a front office perspective, because it keeps the conversation on football if he can answer questions in a way.
Well, yeah,
you know what I'm saying? Like,
this is a pressure cooker like nowhere else in the country,
which is stupid. I hate that.
I know that, but it's just the intense interest of the fans, the intense competition of the media in this market. I mean, now it's not the same. It's not how it was 20 years ago. There was 3 newspapers fighting and, sports radio fighting, and there's all different methods of communication, but there's always going to be that intense interest that's here. So that's part of the territory. But let's keep it focused on, not being answer questions, opposed to like the way he answered something about a hypothetical, how he views, what's his worldview based on an answer, as opposed to, becoming antagonistic with the media, make it become his enemy instead of his ally, and having the media turn against you. I think that's 2 separate things as well.
I think it's stupid as hell.
Yeah.
But I mean, the point is that now Kayvon Thibodeau is a legitimate possibility at 5 or 7 for the Giants. Right now, it looks like 5 would be the spot we would have to take him. I would feel good about Kayvon Thibodeau on this team, to say the least.
Oh, of course. But the question is, if we're at 5 and he's available, do you risk not getting that offensive lineman you want if he's available, if Evan Neal's available, to take him?
I don't know, because right now I'm focused really on just like the prospects. So when I study like other teams' needs, I think it would depend on what the Panthers need at 6 and what nearby teams need that would trade up to 6 to jump us at 7, because there is only that one spot between our 2 picks. I mean, I don't know the answer to that right now. I will say that if we don't come out of this draft with an edge rusher, but we came out with the best tackle possible, I'll feel okay. If we came out of this draft with the best edge rusher, but we didn't come out of here with a starting tackle, I'm going to feel like I don't want to go to any home games this year. With that said, there are possible starting tackles that do not need to be drafted in the top 10, as a disclaimer. Just saying that.
But this is our opportunity, like we drafted Andrew Thomas, to get someone who can be a stalwart on this line for years to come, and we may not have that opportunity again. I feel, and let's put this: I think you can get a competent edge rusher who can do the job lower down. You may not be able to get that as much with getting an elite tackle.
Right. And speaking directly of that, trading down one of those 2 picks is a legitimate possibility. So if the Giants find themselves out of the top 10 but still before 20, somebody I would consider in that range is someone from your least favorite school of all time, Florida State University, Jermaine Johnson. I was skeptical about Jermaine Johnson going into the Senior Bowl, just based on his frame. He just looked like he was going to be a speed-only guy. He is an extremely high-effort guy that is actually pretty good run defender as well. I think that with his blazing speed off the edge would actually pair really well with Azeez Ojulari. he will need to work on adding some weight and getting a little better against the run. I mean, playing against the ACC, your competition kind of flip-flops between insane and not that hard.
It's a top-heavy league with the best of the best, and
Yeah.
it drops off pretty quickly.
Yeah, so I mean, like he Boston College was kind of hard. A lot of really good offensive linemen up there. Other schools not so much. But one of the things that jumps off for me right away is that he uses his hands a lot more than most other guys. And that's like one of those things that you don't see as much at the college level, and that's the biggest difference between the NFL guys is keeping hands off of your body so that you can continue your rush. And a lot of these guys you'll see they lock on a lot, and they're just kind of one-arming and doing that kind of thing. Jermaine Johnson has really active hands, always keeping hands off of his body while he continues his rush, and it's why he's much more successful than most other guys. Jermaine Johnson on this team, if we trade it down, I think might even be the most ideal situation. I mean, if you have that opportunity to get Evan Neal, let's just say, at pick 5 and trade 7 down to, I don't know, I'm picking a number out of hat, 13, 14, and you get Jermaine Johnson, you've pretty much done as good as you can really get, and you've gotten extra assets in that trade down as well.
And it might be, and it's more and more of a possibility every day that, like a James Bradbury's not traded yet because, they may just defer paying, let's say we trade down and we get a first round pick next year or something where we can afford to, pay all these rookies and stuff. It just may become a question of economics that we have to trade down too. So that likelihood of going down, I think, is more than people think it is. And it's not just for accumulating talent. I think it's to pay for all this stuff.
Yeah, somebody else had brought that up to me, and I had not considered that originally. But absolutely true. Real quick, David Ojabo, the other Michigan edge rusher, not as good as Aiden Hutchinson, but fringe round 1, round 2 talent. Probably would have gone in, I would say, from like pick 15 somewhere down. I'm not really totally sure because at his pro day he tore his Achilles, which obviously is going to plummet his draft stock. But he's a young guy. He can return from injury a little bit more than somebody who's, in his upper 20s. How far would he have to fall for you to take a chance on him? A, with the current Giants roster, and B, just as a general rule?
Pretty far.
Okay.
Because to me, you can't miss on a draft pick, and especially a high draft pick in the situation we're in right now. These guys have to hit. And, will he completely recover? Well, hopefully, but it's added risk. And it just decreases the chance for it hitting. So, if he fell quite a bit and he's still there, take a shot at him, sure. But I'd be very skeptical of taking him high because I need these guys to hit. I need the best chance for them to hit.
I 100% agree with you. For the Giants right now, he's just completely off my board. And it's a shame because I really like the guy. I was actually hyping him up a couple months ago, hoping to really highlight him in this episode, and that sucks.
Someone will take a chance.
Someone will take a chance on him. Yeah, absolutely.
And also a team that probably
can. It's a luxury pick
to go for it and go with the higher ceiling and worry about that.
A team that already has a good edge rush that probably has a guy who's about to come off his contract and hit it big somewhere, or has some giant payment in his next year or in 2 years he's going to have a huge cap hit so that they can replace him and hack him
like
off.
The Rams,
maybe on the cheap.
A team like that?
Sure. Or even Tampa Bay. I don't know. Yeah, but I mean, those are luxury picks. And right now, the Giants, I don't think they can risk it at all. They will get zero return on him this year. Zero return. And then what they do get is a complete question mark. They're just not in a position to take that chance, in my opinion. It just can't happen.
100%. Absolutely.
Dipping into the second round, I'm going to highlight someone that a lot of people, a lot of fans of a lot of teams are really into, and that's Georgia pass rusher Trayvon Walker. He really plays kind of all over the place, so it's hard to pinpoint really where he belongs. To me, he looks like he belongs more on the defensive line. I think he plays a little bit better with his hand in the dirt, and I think that he can move along in there. He's a little bit light to be, real obvious that he's a hand in the dirt guy. You know what I mean?
Stop 1 second. So that's the second time you've highlighted somebody that is a little light. How much is that a concern for you? I mean, Georgia is one of the best programs with strength and conditioning, nutrition, all of
Well,
that.
he's
But
only a little light. I mean, for a full-time hand in the dirt guy, you can kind of tell. But he's 272 pounds, so he to me doesn't look. I mean, maybe he is. Maybe he. Okay.
but me,
He could
my
be a
question,
full-time guy in the dirt already. Also,
but my
yeah,
question is, how concerning is that for you going forward? Like when you get to an NFL strength and conditioning program, an NFL, you know, he's worrying full time about what he's eating and all these different things. So if he's a little light, is that something you really concerned about, or is it just give him a year in the program?
Nah, a little light, a little heavy. Those are things that I mention only to highlight their effectiveness in year one. You know what I mean? Like, they're not going to be. It would be very unlikely for them to put on, say, 10 pounds of muscle between the combine and the beginning of their first season when they're in practice. They're not really worrying about bulking up. They're staying in shape, and they're in meetings, and they're doing practice and all that stuff.
But as we always say, we don't draft people for the now. We draft
Right. We don't draft there for the now. But, I mean, that's sort of to say, when I say he's a little light, that generally means that he will get better than his original year. I mean, like, by simple things such as just getting in shape. You know what I mean? Like getting it to the NFL level of shape. And a lot of these guys are a little light because they needed to be faster in college than they needed to be heavy. But that said, Trayvon Walker is 272 pounds. So I guess he would probably be, he could be a full-time guy on the defensive line as opposed to a stand-up rusher. That said, he's insanely fast. Really, really fast, really, really strong. He's got a nice NFL body at 6'5", 270, so he can move around in a lot of different places. He's really strong at the point of attack. To me, if the Giants were considering this guy, I would say almost more like a Leonard Williams replacement.
Mm-hmm.
Less so than playing opposite Azeez Ojulari. I would say he would be kind of that guy, or maybe even, more of a Leonard Williams replacement. He's got that length where he can kind of play, I guess, like the 5 technique and stuff like that, more along the line, but also has that versatility where he can stand up and be effective as well. And he would be a lot cheaper than Leonard Williams. He might be the most expensive guy on the roster.
Yeah, I believe he is. Definitely cap-wise he is.
That's kind of how I view Trayvon Walker, but he's a difficult prospect to really nail down. That said, I don't think that he belongs in the discussion anywhere near the top 10 where I'm seeing crazy shit like that. I don't see that. I could see him going in the first round, but to me, where I grade his actual talent is the upper side of round 2.
Okay, and something, if we...
Well, I mean, like, how would you feel if that was what they did? Instead of getting an edge rusher, they kind of got the next Leonard Williams that's maybe a little bit smaller, but maybe a little bit faster as well.
I mean, we're talking about replacing Leonard Williams after, his replacement when he has 3 years left, 4 years. I mean, do we think he's going to be on the roster for the full term of his contract? Probably not.
Well, not. But I think it was more of a likelihood if the old regime had stayed. But now that we've got new guys coming in, I think it's likely that he's not.
Right, but maybe they in year 3 of the contract or 4. I don't think anytime soon. So I don't know if I want. Again, talk about luxury picks. Planning for his successor 2, 3, 4 years down the line, that's a luxury pick.
Well, I mean, I think he adds value, though. I'm saying, like, he can be a stand-up rusher, and he can do stuff year 1 and be the eventual replacement. He can just kind of slide into a more robust, maybe a different role next year, and the year after. You know what I mean?
So if he's a second-round pick, let's say,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to pay him at a certain scale. That's even more money you're paying for that position, kind of.
I think that's a short-sighted way to look at it. Again, you can use him and Leonard Williams at the same time in different roles, and then as a year goes by, transition him into that Leonard Williams role and then jettison Williams. I don't know the exact structure of Leonard Williams, if that's feasible next year or the year after that or whatever. I'm just saying I think that he can kind of fill both roles at one time, do one, and then I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's not.
I think you've answered. You wouldn't feel that great about it. That's a fair
really.
answer.
I
would feel less good about it. I think Leonard Williams is nailed down for a couple of years. We should just use him while we're paying him.
Exactly. Yeah. I think I'd try to go more for just a straight up rusher than that.
Um,
Because there'll be plenty of guys in the second round that we could pick that's, specializes more in that than, a hybrid guy like that.
that's true. And for that matter, I said before, if we come out of the first round without an edge rusher, we'll be okay. There's other edge rusher guys as well. They are a step down, but they're not a total disaster. And some guys that I do like, D'Angelo Malone from Western Kentucky, who was someone who was not at all on my radar, then was at the Senior Bowl, and it was Justin that was telling me about him because I wasn't watching the one day. We were just watching different position groups. And he was saying that this guy from Western Kentucky was just blowing it up over there, and we looked at him as D'Angelo Malone and whatever. Super fast, looks really fast. I like his bend around the edge. I think that he's pretty good run defender. He's not perfect, but another one of these guys that's going to be a high effort guy. I'm never going to highlight a guy that's not like a high motor guy. It's one of those traits that I seek and destroy. You know what I mean? It looks like he has the ability where he can drop back into coverage. He looks good rushing the passer. He looks comfortable. He looks natural. He just understands how to use his body really well already. And I think, the step up from Western Kentucky coaching to NFL coaching can only do wonders for this kid.
Sure. What are his size measurements?
6'3", 243 pounds. So again, there's a 30-pound difference between him and Trayvon Walker. So 240 is not horrible. I'd like him to be up closer to 250, somewhere in that range. But again, we're talking about like 7 pounds or so. He could add a bit of muscle and be effective this year, and just get better next year.
6'3", height's fine.
Height's okay. 6'3" is enough length to use to your advantage, especially as a stand-up guy. If he were a hand-in-the-dirt guy, one of those like 4-3 defensive ends, or or like a 5 technique like a Leonard Williams, you'd want him closer 6'5", 6'6", 6'7", somewhere in that range. But he's not really that guy, and 6'3", 6'4", 6'2", those are acceptable measurements for the kind of stand-up guy, in my opinion. Obviously, still the longer the better, because you can kind of use that length to keep guys off of your body. But more and more we're seeing the stand-up guys, because they're not getting their hands on them immediately, that length doesn't matter as much. Lastly, in round 3, maybe, there might be somebody. I'm not really sure where he's going to fall. To me, he could be round 2 talent. Maybe he's round 3 talent. And it's Oklahoma linebacker Nick Bonito. I didn't really, have any expectations for him. I was just kind of doing my due diligence, and I was just surprised. He really kind of jumped off of the film for me. I'm trying to pull up my notes while I'm stalling here. Can you tell? There they are. Found it. I had to scroll through a bunch. And 6'3", 248, he actually looks like he could kind of align in multiple different ways, but he's going to be probably more of a stand-up guy in a 3-4. He uses his length to his advantage pretty well. He really just has a great first step off the line and good speed to follow it up. He has an effective speed rush. But one of the things I highlighted before is like the huge difference between the college guys and the NFL guys is hand fighting. Right now, he has like no hand fighting moves at all. He has strong hands, but they're not active enough. So he's really just kind of winning.
Coachable, though, right?
It's definitely coachable. It's just one of those things where you will see the guys who have more success year one are the guys who come in with that skill set already. The other guys, you see that ramp up in their career. The first couple of years, you see them getting better and better and better as they both add the necessary weight into the right scheme. They take to NFL coaching and the complexity of the NFL game, and the nuances, those extra steps and those hand fighting things, the little wiggles at the top of their routes and all those kind of things. The guys that come in with those, they obviously start off better. Right. That's why we're talking about a guy like Nick Bonito in the second, third round. And I honestly think if the Giants are going to be picking anywhere further in the draft than the third round, that they're not really going to be getting anything at all that's going to help at this point, because they already do have a ton of depth at the edge position, right?
They need a break. They need a standout guy.
They need a standout guy.
Yeah.
They need someone that's better than Quincy Roche. It would be ideal if they got somebody better than Azeez Ojulari.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense.
After really going through Kayvon Thibodeau's film, I am actually really excited there's a chance that we could have a legitimate edge rush again. That's how are you feeling about this position in the draft for this team?
I mean, we're set up that we can get that guy for sure. Again, I think it's just going to come down to their big board and, who they like better. They are both, the two biggest needs we think on this team alone. We talked about cornerback, but we've also addressed what we would do about that. But, I think we've done enough on the offensive line is like stopgaps that, do we have to get the very best offensive lineman available? Can we wait to 7 to get that guy as opposed to 5? I feel a little better about it.
Well, I mean, of course, it depends on how 1 through 4 falls.
Exactly.
I mean, if there's 2 guys falling there, if the 2 best guys are just still there, I mean, you might as well just wait till 7 and get Thibodeau.
Yeah, I mean, if it's me, all things considered equal, I'd still go for the lineman over the edge rusher. If they pick an edge rusher over it first, I'm not going to be fighting mad about it, but we better come up with we better get a lineman.
Yeah, it seems like every year we talk ourselves out of getting a good lineman every year.
We need a lineman. I mean, that's the name of the game. That's gotten a GM basically fired, is because we never really addressed the offensive line.
That's a good point.
It's what it's been stressed. I mean,
it's what got a head coach fired, to be honest. I mean, do we think that Tom Coughlin would still be here if Jerry Reese and Mark Ross had addressed the offensive line?
Probably, yeah. Potentially, he'd have been a little longer.
Well, maybe not still here. Sorry, it's been several years now.
Yeah, he would have retired on his terms and maybe a little longer. And maybe Eli Manning. The question is he a Hall of Famer or not is easily more addressed if they fix the offensive lineman, and it's no doubt about it.
That's an interesting way to look at it.
But I mean, the final third of Eli's career is
an old man running for his life.
Exactly. Yeah. So, something if the offensive line is addressed properly, his, Hall of Fame credentials are definitely strengthened. Also, just his overall effectiveness is he doesn't end up a career with the same amount of touchdowns and interceptions. He doesn't end his career, not making the playoffs, only one time in the final X amount of years. So I think that, wiping the slate clean and starting over with a whole new front office, a whole new coaching staff, this is the opportunity to right a wrong that's happened with this franchise for a decade. And if they come away, if we're having a conversation on Friday morning that we didn't draft an offensive lineman,
oh man,
the public relations nightmare, as well as the negative effect of rebuilding this team, is going to be felt very swiftly.
I am far too exhausted to really think about draft day reactions to bad picks right now. I don't have the energy to even fathom the situation where we draft somebody stupid. Oh man, I'm not mentally there yet. I haven't gotten there yet. But that was a fabulous way to end our edge conversation, talking about linemen. But I think you're 100% right. To me, protected, as much as I'm excited about the possibility of having, like, not a once in a lifetime, but a legit alpha dog edge rusher to pair with a legit number 2 edge rusher, for that matter, in a blitz heavy, pass rush heavy scheme, that gets me really excited. But more than anything, I know that this game is about scoring points, and that means keeping your quarterback upright, and it's something we just are not equipped to do right now.
And especially in a year where we have to make a decision about a quarterback that's going to change the trajectory of this franchise.
And whether that decade. We have to make a decision on, potentially 2 quarterbacks. If you move on from Jones, you have to make a decision on another guy that you're going to select, and that guy needs to be put in a situation where he can succeed and not be put in the situation that Daniel Jones was in, where he's constantly flipping through coaches. He's got a rotating offensive line. He's got a rotating offensive line coach. Schemes are constantly changing. I mean, nothing was done to help that guy. So, I mean, whether you're helping Daniel Jones or not, you've got to help your quarterback situation.
You got to build the infrastructure for whoever QB1 is going to be going forward. Yeah. But it starts it starts with making that. Do we have all the data that we need to make the decision on Daniels? So that's going to be priority one, and
Right.
giving him the best possible offensive line, giving him all the weapons to work with. It's all needs to be there to make that accurate assessment.
I agree.
Because it's going to impact next year's draft as well. And
it's going to impact everything. I mean, this is a long-term plan, and that's where they're at. So you got to think long-term. So that's going to do it for this one. Be sure to follow me on Twitter at @football_grump. I do talk a little bit more in depth about prospects. I have more time to talk about, so that's a good place to follow me. And you can follow him at the Cranky Fan. Where what are you talking about over there?
Oh, we got the Lightning playoff push. The Knicks have won 4 in a row. I'm making fun of OJ. All sorts of stuff this week. Lots going on.
Yeah, all right. And, of course, this show is on iTunes, SoundCloud, Google Play, Spotify, the works, as well as YouTube, where it is best experienced, in my opinion. So be sure to subscribe there and leave some cool comments.
Hey, Grump, you know what we didn't do in this episode, which I'm pretty proud of?
What's that?
The gratuitous joke about Chris Rock and...
I'm not talking... I don't
And Will Smith. Good job.
I'm not doing it, man.
Nice work.
I'm ending this episode before we get into it. All right. We'll catch you guys next time. Go Giants.
Go Giants.